Tonight, a terror investigation underway after 2 Jewish men were stabbed in North London. The attacker was eventually tasered by police. The victims are seriously injured but stable.
Shame on you!
The head of the Met Police and a local MP are heckled by the community as the Prime Minister is criticised by Israel for being weak on anti-Semitism.
It's our job to make sure that they feel safe and secure. It's our job to make sure that we absolutely deal with the roots of anti-Semitism and extremism.
Benjamin Netanyahu said words are not enough. Tonight, we'll discuss what leaders here and around the world can do to protect Jewish communities. Also coming up, what Vladimir Putin said to Donald Trump in their first phone conversation for months. Why the former head of the FBI, James Comey, has been arrested for this Instagram post of seashells in the sand. And the battle of the tech billionaires. Elon Musk tells a California court he was duped by the co-founder of OpenAI. Find out why. Coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. We begin tonight with a terror attack on the streets of London, which has drawn condemnation from political leaders here and abroad. 2 Jewish men, aged 76 and 34, are in a serious but stable condition after they were stabbed by a man in Golders Green. The Prime Minister acknowledged it was the government's responsibility to make members of the Jewish community feel safe.
We do have to recognise the levels of anxiety and concern there are that I know about in terms of the Jewish community feeling very much exposed and vulnerable, feeling they've got to hide their identity, sometimes in the health service, sometimes at school, on the streets where they live. And it's our job to make sure that they feel safe and secure. It's our job to make sure that we absolutely deal with the roots of anti-Semitism and extremism. That is what we will do.
But the Prime Minister was criticised by opposition parties, Jewish community leaders and by the President and Prime Minister of Israel. The overriding message, words are not enough. Our communities correspondent Lisa Holland has tonight's first report.
Once again, the Jewish community is reeling after yet another attack on the streets of Britain. This video shows the start of a terrifying few minutes in North London as the attacker, running, is seen lunging towards the man who shouts for help. Then he finds his second victim at a bus stop, the victim's clothing identifying him as a member of the Jewish community. Jewish security volunteers, passers-by and the police detain and pin down the suspect after he'd stabbed the 2 men, one in their 30s and another in their 70s, leaving them with serious injuries. James Marlowe watched events unfold in front of where he lives and filmed as the suspect was taken away by ambulance.
I saw the attacker when I came out of the building on the ground, face down, being treated by the Jewish paramedics called Hatzalah, and they were treating him for a good 15 or 20 minutes. Police were around, helicopters in the sky, more residents coming out because they could hear a lot of commotion.
What's the reaction from people in the community that there's been another incident?
A lot of people around here have been expecting that. They hope it won't come and they get on with their daily lives, picking up their kids from school, work and everything else and shopping, but they've been expecting it.
This is the latest incident targeting the Jewish community and comes just weeks after 4 ambulances run by Jewish volunteers were set on fire in an arson attack in the same part of North London.
We were so shocked and so saddened, but not surprised. We have been asking, God forbid, where will the next incident be? When will it be? Today we found out the answer, but this cannot continue.
Shame on you!
The Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police and the local MP were heckled at the scene. There's frustration amongst those who believe not enough police protection is provided for them.
Let me be clear, we've seen a rise in racist and anti-Semitic hate crime. And whilst I can't comment on live investigations, we know that some individuals are being encouraged, persuaded or paid to commit acts of violence on behalf of foreign organisations and hostile states. If you act out of hatred, racism or anti-Semitism, we will come after you and you will face the consequences.
What we've heard...
An Iran-aligned group said it was responsible for the stabbings, though no evidence has been provided to back that up. It means their unsubstantiated claim could just be opportunistic. People we spoke to after the incident seemed horrified, yet resilient.
What does everybody feel?
That it's not safety anymore to walk on the street.
This is a community which says it is continuously looking over its shoulder, fearful of those who see them as their enemies. Lisa Holland, Sky News, North London.
Well, let's go live now to Sky's Olivia Guthrie, who's in Golders Green tonight for us. And Olivia, just give us an update on the condition of the victims.
Well, we understand from police that the victims are in a stable condition in hospital tonight. Here on the ground, there has been a pretty febrile and angry atmosphere. There was a Stop the Hate march here earlier today with protesters saying that they are angry that politicians, the police, the media just turn up in the wake of these attacks, and that they say they do nothing to stop the anti-Semitism that is behind them. When the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, was here earlier today, he was heckled by the crowd who shouted "Shame on you" repeatedly. And also the local Labour MP, Sarah Sackman, was heckled, and she was sworn at by the crowd. And I asked her whether she heard that anger, and she said that she heard it and that she also understood it. And she said that the government also understands that anger. The Prime Minister has said that he is going to be visiting Golders Green as soon as possible, and he told the Commons earlier today that he is determined to deal with these offences, the like of which we have seen too much recently. And on that, we are just a stone's throw away from where those 4 Jewish ambulances were firebombed in an anti-Semitic arson attack last month. We're very close to a Jewish memorial wall that had an attempted arson attack on it on Monday. There have been numerous anti-Semitic incidents in the capital in recent weeks. Jewish people here in Golders Green saying that they just don't feel safe on British streets anymore. And with today's terrible attack on those 2 men, well, it's just a terrible manifestation of all of those fears.
That's a point, isn't it, Olivia, that this is a community that feels unsafe, it feels on edge. What is it that they want the government to do now to protect them?
Well, the people here on the ground are telling me that, apart from anything else, they just want people to take anti-Semitism seriously. They want it to be a wider conversation in the community at large. They want people to take it seriously wherever they hear it and clamp down on it. They also want to see an increased police presence on their streets, and they want the government to take firm action, which they accuse them so far of not doing.
Olivia, thanks so much for bringing us up to date. Now, it's too early to speculate about the motivations of the man arrested for this violent anti-Semitic attack. We do know that in the hours afterwards, a newly formed group aligned with Iran claimed responsibility for the stabbings. They provided no evidence, so it's very possible that this is a purely opportunistic move by Harakat Ashab al-Yamin al-Islamiyah. They only emerged in early March, but they are being investigated over several recent attacks on Jewish sites.
Let me be clear, we've seen a rise in racist and anti-Semitic hate crime. And whilst I can't comment on live investigations, we know that some individuals are being encouraged, persuaded or paid to commit acts of violence on behalf of foreign organisations and hostile states.
Well, the Met Police chief there. So who are Hai and who are they working for? Well, they've also claimed to be behind anti-Semitic attacks across Western Europe since the beginning of March, including this bombing at a synagogue in Belgium. No one was injured. 5 people aged between 17 to 19 were arrested after this arson attack on a synagogue in the Netherlands. A bomb also exploded at a Jewish school in Amsterdam. 2 people were arrested after a car was set on fire in Antwerp's Jewish quarter. quarter. And in Paris, French police foiled a bomb plot targeting banking offices. 4 people were arrested by counter-terror officers. Well, Sajjan Goyal is the International Security Director at London-based think tank, the Asia Pacific Foundation. Thank you so much, Sajjan, for joining us here on the programme. Just help us understand more about this group, Hai. From what I've read and I understand, they emerged in early March of this year.
So, Yalda, potentially their synthetic operational label effectively outsourced to do deniable sabotage on behalf of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, where potentially it is organized criminal groups doing this on behalf of a potential entity tied to Iran, designed to give some plausible deniability, to have some separation from it. And as we've seen, that their attacks are mostly low sophisticated arson, petrol bomb, sabotage, but always they seem to be focused on anti-Semitism.
And they seem to have emerged soon after the war began with Iran. Is there a known footprint before that?
So Iran has been identified as one of the key countries that have been involved in interfering in British affairs through transnational repression, not just targeting the Jewish community, but also Iranian dissidents as well. We've seen that also in countries like the United States, Australia, Canada. I think the other aspect is that Iran has been very effective at cultivating organized criminal groups. It very much operates through shadow enterprises, through entities that we've seen like Hezbollah, and we've also seen them use Pakistani militia groups like in Syria. So this could just be yet another incarnation of that.
Yeah, so are you saying that this is part of Iran's asymmetric warfare, and these groups are completely Iranian-backed and funded entities, or is this still too early to tell?
Well, I think the police have been cautious to go to that direction as yet, but they have implied that these people that are carrying out attacks seem to be hired, and that they might be actually somewhat naive as to what the purposes are, but that they actually will face very heavy criminal charges tied to working with a foreign state. So we'll have to see as to what this particular incident is. It could be, Yalda, that this group has claimed responsibility, which they do very rapidly. And it's almost like how ISIS would do it. When we would see the lone actor attacks when ISIS were at its peak, they weren't always tied to every single attack, but by associating themselves, it creates that sense of fear, panic, and insecurity amongst the community, especially in Golders Green, which has now been targeted twice recently.
And is there a way then for intelligence services monitoring this group, whether it's online or otherwise, to try and crack down on it? Or is it still operating in a more shadowy format, and we just have to wait and see exactly where the links are and who these people are?
So this particular entity tends to use Telegram, the encrypted messaging app, to send out its messages. It is very likely that through organized criminal groups that could be involved in drug dealing, human trafficking, stolen vehicles, that these are being utilized for the purposes of carrying out these low-grade attacks. We're not seeing as yet, thankfully, anything that could cause mass casualty attacks. But the point is the psychological fear that they are creating and the panic, especially within London's Jewish community, which is yet again another example, has elevated real concern.
Do you believe, and we've, you know, as you say, this could be completely opportunistic, that they have taken and claimed responsibility, but do we think that, you know, given you've talked about the sort of attacks that have taken place in the United States, where Iranian dissidents, for example, say that they have been targeted by the Iranian regime, that this could be part of a sort of wider global link targeting Western capitals?
It could well be tied to other events that we've seen. You mentioned what had happened in Belgium, and also there were concerns about incidents in the Netherlands and France. In the United States, we saw very prominent civil rights activists from Iran being targeted. In fact, the Iranian state was accused of actually hiring a Russian mob firm with the specific purpose to kill her. Now, a lot of these people, they don't have the power to overthrow the state, but such is the resentment that Tehran has towards them that they want to engage with organized criminal groups. So on the one hand, it is designed to target dissidents. And on the other hand, it seems to be focused on the Jewish community. I think it's also important to point out that the Jewish community is not tied to the state of Israel. Whatever Israel may be doing in terms of its operations, that is not the fault of the Jewish community. And they are being targeted directly in association with that, which is, of course, very wrong.
Yeah. Sergeant Goel, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Pleasure.
So growing evidence that Iran might be outsourcing terror attacks across Europe as its war with America drags on. We know too that the diplomatic impasse between the two countries is dragging down the global economy. No quick win means the US president is frustrated, and it explains images like this. An AI-generated Donald Trump armed with an automatic weapon with multiple explosions behind him.
They have very little left, and they have some missiles, a small percentage. They have a small percentage of missile-making facilities. We knocked out about 80% of them. The rest could come very quickly if we don't make a deal.
Well, he's on the defensive, having to explain why his short war has lasted more than a month and cost $25 billion.
The president keeps telling us that it's over. What was it, a week ago Friday, the president announced that Iran had agreed to give up their nuclear program, to give up their ballistic missile program, to stop support for terrorist groups, to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The only problem with that is literally none of that was true. He was completely making it up.
Well, that was a senior Democrat berating the War Secretary Pete Hegseth there after he was hauled in front of a congressional committee, which is why his conversation today with this man, Vladimir Putin, is so interesting.
What involvement does he want to have in the Iran situation?
He told me he'd like to be involved with the enrichment if he can help us get it. I said I'd much rather have you be involved with ending the war with Ukraine.
Well, let's bring in our Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett. And Ivor, a conversation between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin is always interesting in terms of the optics, but just give us a sense of what we know about this particular conversation.
Yeah, good evening, Yalda. So I think all the talk in Washington this week of the UK's special relationship with the US has made Vladimir Putin a little bit jealous, actually, because this phone call, which he initiated, feels very much like an attempt by him to rekindle his own special relationship with Trump, which has fallen by the wayside lately. This is the first time they've spoken in more than 7 weeks. They chatted for an hour and a half. And the readout from the Kremlin from this call reads more like a love letter rather than a telephone transcript. Such was the level of flattery coming from the Russian side. So we're told that Putin began by expressing support for Donald Trump following that shooting over the weekend at that press dinner. We're told he then wished happy birthday to Melania Trump, the First Lady, for her birthday a few days ago. And he praised the American president on his decision to extend the ceasefire with Iran. So in full-on flattery mode, really trying to massage the Trump ego. And we're also told from the White House tonight that Putin also offered his help when it comes to Trump's negotiations with Iran. This is not the first time he's done that, marketing himself as a peacemaker, because Iran, of course, is a close Russian ally. But as you heard from Trump, he's not interested right now. Apparently, he told Putin, end your own war first before you help with mine.
Yeah, Ivor, what's also interesting is in the last few days, we saw the Iranian foreign minister visiting Moscow, speaking with Vladimir Putin. And in the background, we know that Russia has actively been providing intelligence and military support to the Iranians as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, of course, as I say, Iran is a very, very close ally of Russia's, and they're in a bit of a pinch here because they don't want to provide too much support to Iran because they don't want to risk upsetting Donald Trump, who they need when it comes to Ukraine, which remains Vladimir Putin's top priority. And that's really, I think, the reason why Putin is making this call. That's the key question here. Why is he making this call and why now? And the answer judging by the conversations I'm having with diplomats and analysts here, is because Putin right now, when it comes to Ukraine, needs help. He knows that time is not on his side. And the reasons for that are because the Russian economy, despite the windfall recently from the spike in oil price, continues to go from bad to worse. Ukraine's ability to harm Russia with their drone attacks continues seemingly to increase. And Moscow's main diplomatic cheerleader, Donald Trump, is no longer interested, really. He's totally consumed with the crisis in the Middle East. So this felt like an attempt by Putin to put himself back in Trump's field of vision, offer him something on Iran in the hope of re-engaging him favourably on Ukraine. But at the moment, it seems like Donald Trump isn't really taking the bait.
Ivor, as always, thank you so much. OK, well, we've been following the developments coming out of North London from Golders Green, and the Metropolitan Police has released body cam footage now from the officers who attended the scene at Golders Green today. Just have a look at this image, because we have been getting throughout the day different angles of that stabbing that took place, that chilling footage. But just have a look at this latest imagery.
Get down on the ground! Down on the ground! Down on the ground! Step back! Taser! Taser! Jacket! Taser! Taser! Get on the ground! Detention of power! Detention of power! Drop the knife! 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 Go! Drop the knife! Drop the knife! Detention of power! Get off! Pull your arm out! Mate, pull his arm up! Pull his arm up! Mate, you're under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder. Should have presented mate, I'm in defence. Do mention when questioned something which you later on in court. And if you do so, maybe give another. Suspect detained. Suspect detained.
There's dramatic footage there, body cam footage from the police, released by the Metropolitan Police today from that attack that took place in Golders Green earlier today. So you could hear the police officer asking that suspect to drop the knife and arresting him while he was on the ground. But that was body cam footage that has been released by the Metropolitan Police. This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim, still to come on the programme. Running out, airlines and government scramble for new contingencies as jet fuel supplies dwindle.
With respect, Minister, answer the question.
It's you. Hello and welcome, I'm Cathy Newman.
So could the outcome of these elections be manipulated? New me, new show, new furniture.
Hard news needs a hard chair.
I feel like I'm in therapy.
Oh, it's room for two on this one.
Do you think people will take me seriously with my feet up?
Sorry, madam, but we're closing now.
Oh, sorry. Sofa sorted. Let's get this show on the road.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Let's focus on the economic impact of the Iran war. British refineries have been asked by the government to maximise jet fuel supplies as airlines get increasingly worried about grounding more flights because of shortages. Our business and economics correspondent Paul Kelso explains.
Airlines are cancelling flights, and across the world, ministers are warning of jet fuel shortages. So are our summer holidays really under threat from the Iran war? Let's try and answer the question. The first thing to say is the price of jet fuel has gone up faster and further than any oil product, including petrol and diesel. It more than doubled in price after the war began and got to spikes higher than after the Ukraine war and the global financial crisis. And that is largely in part because there is a problem with supply and demand. This shows us supply of jet fuel in black. This excludes China and the Middle East for reasons I'll come back to. 5.7 million barrels a day produced. You can see it is short of global demand by 600,000 barrels. That's the red shaded area. Now, if you take that away, then airlines and the global economy have got a problem. Now, that is normally more than filled by exports from the Middle East, around 450,000 barrels a day, and China, 250,000. But through force, the Strait of Hormuz is closed, choking off the Middle East supply, and China has imposed an export ban to protect its domestic market. So you take that supply away, well, what's filling the gap? Now, Kepler, who are a trade analyst who provided these data, say that a chunk has come from jet fuel at sea. Now, there's always a quantity of jet fuel and other oil products at sea. It's either on its way to customers or perhaps it's waiting for the best price. Kepler say around 480,000 barrels a day has been drawn down to try and fill this demand gap. You see, it hasn't completely filled it, but it has provided a buffer. But that buffer is now severely depleted. We can have a look at how that has taken effect. This is the global quantity of jet fuel at sea. If we look at the start of the war, the level is absolutely in keeping, a little bit more than the last couple of years. But since March, it has depleted fast, and that is putting airlines under stress. This is Lufthansa. Earlier this month, Europe's second largest carrier announced it was cutting 20,000 flights to save 40,000 tonnes of jet fuel that had doubled in price, and they were not alone. This chart shows us airlines that are cancelling flights. The deeper the red line, the deeper the cuts. Qatar and Etihad, close to the centre of the conflict, the big ones. Most of these are Asian airlines who were the first to be exposed to these shortages, but they're not alone at all. These are bigger airlines. Qatar, again, is the outlier, but British Airways is in here. Lufthansa's in here. United Airlines have announced they're cutting capacity by 5% for 6 months. KLM is doing the same. It should be said, this is a tiny sliver of global capacity, and there is no knowing whether jet fuel supplies will come to a crunch. But as long as prices remain high, as long as demand remains the same, well, it could well be that the cheap, plentiful, short-haul travel we have come to take for granted will come under severe pressure this summer.
That was Paul Kelso there. Well, there are new questions about the future of OPEC's sway over global oil supplies and prices after the cartel's third largest producer, announced it's quitting. The UAE said it wants greater flexibility to sell more oil unconstrained by OPEC production caps. But regional politics are also at play. The Gulf monarchy has had increasingly frosty relations with OPEC's biggest player, Saudi Arabia. The UAE's withdrawal likely won't have any immediate effect on markets. Oil prices rose more than 6% on Wednesday, with Brent crude trading around $119 a barrel, a one-month high. Well, let's speak now to John Sverkinakis. He's chief economist at the Gulf Research Centre in Riyadh. Thank you so much, John, for joining us again here on the programme. I mean, the fact is the UAE's departure is a big deal. They were part of this cooperation for 5 decades.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me again. Great to be with you, Yalda. Absolutely. As you said, this is a rift that has widened and deepened, and it has now translated into the exit of the UAE. The UAE is not shy to also say to the region and the world and Saudi Arabia that I'm a big producer as well, and I want to have an independent foreign policy. I want to be a producer, and I believe that oil prices will differentiate from what you thought, which is Saudi Arabia. So this is the beginning of a new OPEC. We don't know if this is the end of OPEC, but for sure this is a new beginning for the UAE and a new beginning for Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries.
Why this moment? Why did the UAE take this kind of decision? You know, when we're still in the middle of this war, there is still a lot of uncertainty. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively still closed. Why did they choose this very moment?
Because I think they want to indicate that they are becoming independent, they are doubling down, and they're going at it alone. And also, it's an indication that they're aligned with the US, they're more aligned with Israel, and they need to be away from what they consider to be the vestiges of Saudi Arabia and OPEC. For a very long time, they had big differences within OPEC. The biggest was in 2021, when it became quite public, and then Saudi Arabia had to intervene to fix the relationship. But then there are regional differences, how they manage Yemen, Egypt, the Middle East, the Levant, differences in Pakistan and about Pakistan. Saudi Arabia signed a defense pact with Pakistan, and for a very long time, the UAE had deposited $3.5 billion in the central bank. All of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, it was withdrawn. So something was going on, it was brewing. And it's also about the way the GCC and the UAE and Saudi Arabia have been managing the whole crisis. They have received a lot of difficulties as a result of the attacks, and they have received the brunt of the drones and missiles from Iran, and they feel that they need to go alone at this time. It's far better to do it by themselves than by being in this difficult nexus with Saudi Arabia, which they don't have the upper hand.
Yeah, John, it's interesting because rather than the war bringing the GCC together, and despite these statements that we've continued to hear from these different leaders, it feels like it's almost caused further deepened, certainly the rift between the UAE and Saudi Arabia, which we were seeing anyway before this war began. Do you think on the part of the UAE this is an emotional decision and they could be coming in over their skis?
Yeah. Not at all. I think, Yalda, it's a decision that has been thought quite deeply and for quite some time. The rift has been going on with Saudi Arabia for quite some time, and it has become worse. I think they decided that this is the time, as we're getting closer to some kind of a resolution. The resolution could be a few months away. The strait will open and everybody will need to pump more oil because we need far more oil. Today, we're short of 750 million barrels. So the UAE wants to be independent from the containment of Saudi Arabia, and they want to pump more oil to help their local economy. And I think that's far more realpolitik than emotional. But they do want to show it. And I think the next step will be probably an exit from the GCC, which is the political unit that defines the 6 Gulf states, and possibly the Arab League, which they consider to be less useful. So this is, again, more about the foreign policy bravado that the UAE is displaying, that, look, I'm also a very big regional power, and I want to contest and show my strength rather than be under the tutelage of the Gulf or Saudi Arabia.
John, fascinating hearing your thoughts there. Thank you so much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you.
Now, the former FBI Director James Comey has been released after facing court accused of threatening President Trump. It has to do with this image. Seashells arranged on a beach to form the number 8647. The number 86 is slang in America for get rid of or throw someone out. Donald Trump is the 47th president. James Comey posted, then later deleted the picture on social media last year. Well, let's go to our US correspondent, David Blevins, who joins us from Washington. Extraordinary, isn't it, David, that this all goes back to this image on Instagram?
Yes, that's right, Yalda. The prosecution says this is about a threat to the life of the president. James Comey's lawyer says it is politically motivated. We didn't see him today. There were no cameras in court, and he didn't enter a plea because you can't be arraigned in Virginia on charges originating in North Carolina. But we know he is very strenuously denying any allegation that these two numbers, 86 and 47, formed out of seashells, amounted to a threat to President Trump, and one that was transmitted across state lines. Now, a short time ago, the president was asked if he believed his former FBI director had threatened his life. Donald Trump said the number 86 was, in his opinion, a mob term, and that he had probably been in danger. But this isn't the first attempt to convict James Comey. A previous case accusing him of lying to Congress was thrown out by a federal judge, and his attorney, Pat Fitzgerald, says they will be filing motions of vindictive prosecution. In other words, alleging this is politically motivated. Because, of course, there's been no love lost between President Trump and James Comey since the former FBI director chose to investigate claims of Russian interference in the 2016 election when President Trump beat Hillary Clinton.
Thanks so much for bringing us up to date, David. Now to a California courtroom showdown between the founders of OpenAI, Elon Musk and Sam Altman. The tech billionaire started the company which is behind ChatGPT in 2015. Now Musk is suing Altman and others, accusing them of abandoning OpenAI's original non-profit mission. They say Musk is motivated by jealousy and efforts to bolster his own rival AI company. The world's richest man returned to the witness box earlier for day 2 of his testimony. Let's go live to NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung. Brian, just bring us up to date on what happened in court.
Yeah, Yalda, it's great to be with you. This is a case that is 50% the future of artificial intelligence and also 50% a schoolyard feud between two massive billionaires who don't appear to like each other, but they do have a past that's linked together. If we rewind about 10 years ago, Elon Musk helped Sam Altman stand up OpenAI under what Musk thought was the premises that it was going to remain a nonprofit company. Musk gave $38 million and a number of other resources and support to the nonprofit at the time, and felt slighted when Sam Altman and OpenAI decided to switch the structure of that company from a nonprofit to a nonprofit that had a very substantial for-profit arm. As we know now, that's worth billions of dollars. Elon Musk now taking OpenAI to court, arguing that this isn't the type of company that I had committed to when I first gave you this money. And for that reason, he's now asking for OpenAI to give up what could be more than $130 billion if Sam Altman and OpenAI lose this case. As you point out, this is the second day of testimony for Elon Musk in this court in Oakland, where our producers are inside. There were some tense moments today, specifically where Elon Musk was facing questions from the attorneys representing Sam Altman, and appeared to have some contention with the yes/no framing of these questions. Elon Musk seeming to dodge these questions and refusing to say yes or no to some of them, disagreeing with the premise of these questions. At one point, he tried to go back to the pressing attorney, asking the question, did you ever stop beating your wife as a hypothetical. The judge very quickly said we're not going to go there, and seemed to suggest that Elon Musk was not properly answering some of these questions. So I think it's fair to say that the temperature inside of this court on this second day of testimony with Elon Musk was particularly hot. Again, this is a major case because if OpenAI does have to pay up over $130 billion, it would not go to Elon Musk. It would go to the nonprofit side of the business, but that would severely hobble a company that's trying to compete against the likes of Anthropic, Google, and Meta in what is a very quickly escalating race on artificial intelligence.
Brian, thank you so much for bringing us up to date there. Now, the royal state visit moved to New York today, where the King and Queen visited the 9/11 memorial, meeting relatives of those killed in the terrorist attacks almost 25 years ago. Charles and Camilla are expected to wrap up their 4-day trip back at the White House tomorrow with a formal farewell from President Trump. Royal correspondent Laura Bundock reports from New York.
There will be plenty to reflect on after this state visit, not least the volatile politics of Washington. But at the National Memorial to September the 11th in New York, a moment to remember and commemorate. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the attacks here, something the King referenced when he diplomatically defended NATO at Congress. Less diplomatic, a second unplanned outburst from Trump.
He's a great king, and he's a great friend of mine. And I think if he were doing that, if that were up to him, he would have probably helped us with Iran. He would have followed the suggestions we made with respect to Ukraine.
We've heard Trump say a lot worse, but the problem is the King's supposed to be above politics. But at the very least, it was embarrassing. No doubt they'll be glad for some distance from Washington with a day here in New York.
I'm going to put it deep into the dirt.
And so to a patch of Harlem going green, growing sustainable farms from disused urban lots. Everything here shared to feed the community, all curious to chat to their visitor.
We just bent down. King Charles. Is your name Mr. King Charles? Mr. Charles, you are really nice.
For the Queen, an event at New York's iconic public library with a pretty iconic guest list. She's not meeting Epstein survivors, but also took time with charities supporting victims of abuse. A big day in the Big Apple before returning to Washington, and a final goodbye to the president and his unpredictable posturing on the King. Laura Bundock, Sky News in New York.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, we'll return to today's terror attack in London and examine the events leading up to the stabbings.
I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation. So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts. I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation. So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. What you see a lot of here are military machines, soldiers, devastation and destruction. What you see very little of are the locals, the Gazans, the people who used to live here, the ghosts of this town. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered. You have the black flag, you have the yellow flag. People were kidnapped.
Inside this convoy, prisoners released by Israel in exchange for their hostages. The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners. There were tears and there was defiance. This land has been farmed for hundreds of years, but now it's a scene of conflict. Israeli settlers have come to this area to seize land.
They've taken the land that I inherited from my father, and my father inherited from his father.
What would happen if you entered it?
Oh, we'll be shot.
This is a place where the past is cherished, but the future is feared. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Sky News, get the full story first.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Returning now to the London terror attack today in Golders Green, the Metropolitan Police has tonight released body cam video from the officers who confronted the suspect. Have a look.
Get down on the ground! Down on the ground! Down on the ground! Step back!
2 officers can be seen facing down the suspect in the middle of the road before using a taser as they arrest him. The attack, declared a terrorist incident by police, left 2 Jewish men aged 76 and 34 in hospital. Well, Sky's Sadia Chowdhury has been going over video capturing the attack and arrest to get a clearer picture of exactly how things unfolded.
2 Jewish men were taken to hospital after being attacked in North London. A 45-year-old man is in custody. Police are treating this as a terrorist incident. Sky's data and forensics team has analysed video from the scene and CCTV to create a detailed timeline of what happened. Here's how the attack unfolded. It's 11:15 in the morning and this is the first sighting of the alleged attacker. He's seen running along Highfield Avenue in North London, off Golders Green Road. Another man can be seen walking towards him. 10 seconds later, the suspect lunges towards the man. He appears to attack him before the man manages to turn and escape towards Golders Green Road. The suspect, still running, follows. Within seconds, at 11:16 a.m, police say they're responding to reports of a stabbing on Highfield Avenue. CCTV footage captures the suspect again, this time walking on Golders Green Road, approaching a bus stop. He's seen pulling a knife from his jacket before lunging towards another man waiting at the bus stop. The suspect is then spotted again around 9 minutes later, 130 metres north of the bus stop. As he approaches police, he pulls what appears to be a knife out of his pocket. 20 seconds later, he's tasered by officers and falls to the ground. 40 seconds after this, the suspect is face down and being put in handcuffs. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News.
Well, with me is Laura Marks, co-founder and chief executive of Nisa Nashim, the UK's largest Jewish Muslim women's network. Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us here on the programme. I just want to begin by getting your reaction to today's attacks.
Well, I think obviously it's horrific. I think that
those of us in the Jewish community who are sort of working in this field, we're sort of punch drunk. It feels like every day something else is happening. And you almost wake up thinking, I wonder what awful thing is going to happen next. And this, of course, was particularly horrific. It's a very small Jewish community. I don't think people necessarily realise there's only about 280,000 Jews in the whole country. And Golders Green is very much geographically at the centre. So many of us live within a couple of miles of there. And it's sort of where we go. It's where you often go to buy kosher food, or it's sort of a normal place. And this was a particularly nasty, brutal attack. So I think everybody's just stunned. It's like, how can this be?
As you say, it feels like every other week there is something that we hear, arson attacks or synagogues being attacked. I spoke to you during the Manchester attack, and in total, 121 violent anti-Semitic incidents recorded in the UK in the 12 months to April 26.
Wow. I mean, it is terrifying. The proportion of hate crime against Jews is particularly high. And, you know, it doesn't really matter what your political views are. You can have very, very extreme views or very strong views about what's going on in the Middle East or internationally, but it's not a reason to go and kill Jews or attack Jews with knives. It just isn't. It's just not okay to take out people's feelings about what's going on thousands of miles away on ordinary British Jews. We are British people, the same as anybody else who's British. I'm fourth generation British. I'm Jewish. You know, I'm Jewish. There's not a reason to attack me.
I had a guest on earlier who said exactly this, that the actions of, say, the Israeli government does not mean that you can just go and attack the Jewish community in Britain.
No, exactly. It's people have got, within the Jewish community, a very wide range of views about what's going on in Israel and in the Middle East generally. Most people are supportive of Israel, sort of basically, with a wide range of political views within it. It doesn't matter, though, does it? It's not relevant. It's not okay to attack Jews or to have feelings about Jews or negative feelings about Jews or prejudice about Jews because of what's going on abroad. It's just not okay.
What needs to happen? Because we are seeing a rise in anti-Semitism. We have, over the course of the last few years, not just here in Britain, across Europe, in the United States. It feels like this, you know, this thing that's brewing, and it's left the Jewish community, certainly here in Britain, on edge.
Yes. I think there's lots of different things we need to do. And the first one is one that obviously the government is taking very seriously and the police are taking seriously, which is security. We need to make the Jewish people safe. And that's about security, it's about policing, it's about patrolling, it's about all the things that you need to keep any community safe. And I think that's obviously number one. But further down the line, we've got to educate people about what anti-Semitism looks like, what particularly it is that makes it anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish, as opposed to any other form of hatred. And we've got to also find ways to bring people together. You know, as I said, there's only 280,000 Jews in the country. Most people will never meet a Jew. And if you live in many parts of the country, there aren't any Jews. People don't meet them, so how do they hear about them? They hear about them through social media, and we know what people's feeds are like, right? It's sort of, your feeds are affected by all sorts of influences. You hear about it, what your friends say, what your family says, but you don't often maybe meet a Jew. You don't know that the person next door might be Jewish, the person down the road might be Jewish. Ordinary people, and that's what we're trying to do at Nisan Nashim, which means women in Arabic and in Hebrew. And we're trying to focus on the similarities we have. Of course there are differences. There are political differences, there are religious differences, but there's lots and lots of similarities too. And we're trying to focus on bringing people together so they know each other. And you break down those barriers and you get to realise, yeah, you've got kids, we were just before talking about your children and normal things. And we live our lives in the same way. You know, if you live in Golders Green and I live in Golders Green, we have both got the same values, particularly as women, around things like wanting our children to grow up safe, wanting our families to have good education, wanting to address the cost of living crisis, all the basic stuff, and to be safe. And a lot of that is about getting to know each other, to meet one another, to recognise the value of each other. And I think that long term, right now, we've got to address safety, but long term, we've got to build these relationships. We've got to get people to know each other. We've got to build cohesive societies where people recognise the value of one another. And you know, people watching, if there's one thing they can do, they can reach out to their Jewish neighbour and they can say, we feel for you, we're here for you. What can we do to help?
Laura, we're so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for joining us. And that's it from me and the team. Good night for now.